Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and this is Trooper Brin Milo, Tanith first and only, and the youngest known survivor of the fall of Tanith as of 770s M41, roughly. I think that's the latest information we have on the whereabouts of the Tanith first, and Brin Milo was the first of the hangers-on, although it took every length to change that and became full trooper and joined the Tanith first and only as soon as he was old enough. The reasons why Milo managed to get off world are almost entirely circumstantial. In fact, circumstance upon circumstance, depending on how you look at it. During the founding of the Tanith 1st, 2nd and 3rd, the intended 3 regiments tithed from the planet of Tanith, the newly promoted Colonel Commissar Gaunt had come to the planet to inspect and take charge of the troops. And as the Tanith government saw him as being quite important, given that he was taking charge of their tithe, they wanted to make sure he felt comfortable during his stay. And one of those things was to ensure that he had the wonderful, relaxing sound of the Tanith pipes. And so young Brin Milo was assigned to follow Gaunt around every step, every room, everywhere he could possibly go, and never stop playing the relaxing sound of the Tanith pipes. This decision was of course not run by Gaunt in advance, who upon being on world for only a few days was very much infuriated by the constant screeching din that was following him through every single room, no matter where he went, no matter who he spoke to, always this din in the background. But what that did mean is that when the Chaos Splinter Fleet arrived and attacked Tanith, and Gaunt took the decision to evacuate as much as he could, Milo was in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to help Gaunt himself get off world, and in doing so, Milo came along with. And thus began the adventure that is the rest of his life. This model, as with the others in the set, is part of the 2002 Gaunt's Ghosts box that I bought at the time and painted somewhat poorly, and I've cleaned them up and I'm having another go now. My skills in painting have far improved over what they were all those years ago, although there has been a large interim where I really haven't painted very much at all. That said, because I'm doing several of these models in a row, I wanted to keep the paint scheme relatively simple, and there is of course that argument of how much effort versus how much effect do you get out of it. So for most of the model it's a 2 paint combination. Slightly darker tone as a base coat, and then mixing the dark tone and the lighter tone together to create highlights. There's some wet blending and edge highlighting and some similar, just simple stuff. I'm not expecting to win any competitions, but I do want to make these look pretty good. Particularly important is the camo cloak, which will get a dark green and a light green as the 2 colours, to give me a good base point for painting the camouflage scheme later. Another pair of colours went on the Tanith pipes. Now I flitted between a couple of different ideas on how to paint Milo's pipes here, and the first one is I was sorely tempted to paint them in a tartan style, but that wouldn't really be appropriate as much as the Tanith first and only are kind of pseudo-Scots, space Scots. Tartan was never mentioned at any point during any of the books or any of the related material, so thankfully I resisted that urge. The next option I had was to paint it black, kind of black with a grey highlight. And that would match the uniform quite nicely, but it also would mean visually it disappeared. And also thematically it's not really appropriate because Milo had these pipes before he joined the Imperial Guard. In fact, he was piping for Gaunt's Ghosts for several years before he was old enough to join the Guard. So these pipes are a relic of the government officials of Tanith. And so by painting it purple with a pink highlight, I felt that that kind of suited. Now I don't think I got the highlights quite how I wanted them in this case, but it is still a noticeably different colour, and that's the important thing that I was going for. And also with purple on my palette, I painted in some of his tattoos. Brin Milo has had one of the most interesting and varied lives of any of the Tanith first and only, or any of the survivors of Tanith at all. Not only is he the only civilian rescued from the fall of Tanith, investigated by the Inquisition, which is certainly not an everyday occurrence for an Imperial Guardsman, but also witnessing the ascension of a saint of the Imperium, who they met as the Isholi girl Sanian, or Shanian. Now first it was assumed that she was merely a homeless ex-farm girl with some kind of mental disorder, possibly PTSD, and merely believed herself to be a reincarnation of Saint Sabbat. However, as the story unfolds, it comes to light that no, she really is the Saint Reborn, and Milo attends her as her bodyguard and leaves the Tanith First and Only at this time. For the next few books in the series, we're missing Brin Milo as a character, and that is somewhat of a shame, but he is doing the Emperor's work after all. So let's look again at my painting scheme for the Tanith Warcloak. With the original dark green with the light green highlights, I'm painting in small stripes of various colours, and where they pass over the highlights of the original light green, I'm then highlighting the stripes in the same way to try and match those highlights as best I can. Having done this now for 7 models, including my test models, these are coming out passably, certainly good enough for the tabletop or to put on a shelf as a group. But the various colours I'm mixing in are black with a grey, so that's the same as the uniform, a dark brown with a light brown, which I have used for some of the wood and some of the pouches at various points in some of the models. I'm then also using an ochre with a sand, like a tan, and this is to bring in some bright spots to the camouflage scheme so that it's not all dreary and dark. And so with the camo cloak and some finishing touches done, that is the Brin Milo model painted. As before, I'm not painting the bases today, but for the moment I can put him on the shelf with the others and say, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.